I am sitting here in my dorm room tonight staring at my final semester grades, and I still cannot process what my parents just demanded from me over the phone. For 6 years since I was 16 years old, I have been sending $800 every single month from my part-time wages to help pay my family's rent. Today, just weeks before my college graduation, my mother called with a demand so outrageous that it left me completely speechless and questioning everything about my relationship with my family. Before I tell you what my parents demanded this time, I would love to know where you are watching from. Please hit that like button and subscribe if you want to hear more stories about family drama that will shock you. Trust me, what they asked for will make your jaw drop. Let me take you back to where this whole financial nightmare began. My name is Isabella, and I grew up thinking I had a pretty normal middle-class family here in Arizona. My father, Robert, had been working steady jobs throughout my childhood, and my mother, Linda, worked part-time as a secretary at a local medical office. My younger brother, Marcus, was just 13 when my story really begins, so he was obviously not working or contributing financially to anything at that point. Everything changed dramatically when I turned 16. My father had lost his job about a year earlier, and while my mother was still working her part-time hours, money had definitely gotten tighter around our house. But I never expected what happened during that one dinner conversation that would completely reshape the next 6 years of my life. I remember sitting at our kitchen table on a Tuesday evening when my mother, Linda, looked directly at me and said something that still gives me chills today. She said, "Isabella, you are old enough now to start contributing to this household. The monthly rent on this house is $1,200, and we need you to cover $800 of that amount starting this month." I felt my stomach drop. I had just gotten my first job at Tony's Pizza down the street making $12 per hour, and I was working about 25 hours per week. The idea of handing over $800 every month seemed impossible, but my father, Robert, immediately backed up my mother's demand. "This is about learning responsibility," he explained to me with a completely serious expression. "In the real world, everyone has to pay rent to live somewhere. You are not going to be any different. This is a valuable life lesson that will serve you well when you are an adult." I remember asking if this was just temporary until my dad found another job, but they both made it clear that this was a permanent arrangement. They told me that as long as I was living under their roof and earning money, I would be expected to contribute my fair share to household expenses. So there I was at 16 years old working 25 hours every week at a pizza restaurant, and every single paycheck I earned, $800, went directly to my parents. I was left with maybe $200 per month for my own expenses, like gasoline for the used car. They had helped me buy school supplies, clothes, and occasionally some money to spend with friends. During that first year of this arrangement, I really tried to convince myself that this was normal. I thought maybe other families did similar things with their working teenagers. I told myself this was just teaching me about real-world responsibilities and preparing me for adulthood. But as I started paying more attention to my classmates and friends, I realized how dramatically different my life had become compared to other kids my age. My friends were participating in school sports, joining academic clubs, going on school-sponsored trips, and spending their weekends studying or hanging out together. They had the luxury of focusing on their education and enjoying their teenage years. Meanwhile, I was declining every invitation because I either did not have the money to participate or did not have the time because of my work schedule. When my friends wanted to go to movies or shopping on weekends, I had to tell them I was working. When they stayed after school for club meetings or sports practices, I had to rush directly to my job. My grades started slipping during my junior year because I was constantly exhausted and never had adequate time to study. I was getting maybe 5 or 6 hours of sleep most nights because I would get home from work around 10 p.m. Try to do homework, and then had to wake up early for school the next morning. The social isolation was probably the hardest part of this whole arrangement. I felt like I was watching my teenage years pass by through a window, unable to participate in the normal experiences that should have been mine. Every month when I handed over that $800 to my parents, I wondered when this situation would finally end. When I turned 17, I decided to have a conversation with my parents about possibly reducing the amount I had to pay them each month. I had been doing some research and learned that most teenagers who worked part-time jobs got to keep their earnings for college savings, personal expenses, or just spending money. I thought maybe I could convince them to lower my monthly payment. The conversation did not go anything like I had hoped it would. My mother, Linda, immediately became defensive and seemed almost offended that I had even brought up the subject. She said, "Do you think money just falls out of the sky, Isabella? This family needs everyone to pull their weight and contribute what they can." My father, Robert, added, "Your brother Marcus is still too young to work, but when he gets older, he will have to contribute to this household just like you are doing. This is not about picking on you specifically." That comment gave me a glimmer of hope. I thought maybe this financial burden would eventually be shared with Marcus, or maybe when he started working, I would not have to pay as much. I convinced myself that this was just a temporary situation until Marcus could help carry the load. So I accepted the arrangement and continued working at the pizza place, continued handing over $800 every month, and continued believing that eventually things would change for the better. I had no idea how much worse things were actually going to get. When I graduated from high school and prepared to start college, I genuinely believed that my financial obligations to my family would finally decrease, or maybe even end completely. I had worked incredibly hard to earn a partial academic scholarship to State University, but I still needed to take out $15,000 in student loans each year to cover the remaining tuition costs, plus room and board. I remember approaching my parents about reducing my monthly payments since I would now be a full-time college student with significant educational expenses and debt. I thought surely they would understand that my focus needed to shift toward my education and my future career. Instead, they informed me that my $800 monthly payment would continue exactly as it had been. They explained that my college education was my own personal investment, and my family responsibilities had not changed just because I was pursuing a degree. So, throughout my entire college experience, I worked 2 different part-time jobs while carrying a full course load of classes. I spent 20 hours per week working at a campus coffee shop and another 15 hours per week tutoring other students online. Between attending classes, studying, and working 35 hours every week, I was averaging about 4 hours of sleep per night. My diet during college consisted mainly of ramen noodles, peanut butter sandwiches, and whatever free food I could find at campus events. After sending $800 home every month and paying for basic necessities like gasoline and textbooks, I had almost nothing left for proper meals or any kind of social activities. But the most painful part of my college experience was watching how differently my parents treated my brother Marcus when he started college 2 years later. When Marcus turned 18 and enrolled at the same university where I was studying, my parents covered every single one of his expenses completely. They paid his full tuition without him needing any student loans. They gave him $500 every month for spending money. They bought him a brand new laptop that cost over $2,000. They got him the newest iPhone model. They even paid for him to join a fraternity and participate in a study abroad program during his sophomore year. When I asked my mother, Linda, why Marcus did not have to contribute financially to the family like I did, her explanation was incredibly hurtful. She said, "Marcus needs to be able to focus completely on his studies because he has the potential to become an engineer. His education requires total concentration." The implication was obvious that my education was somehow less important, or that I was not capable of achieving great things if I could focus entirely on school. I was still using the same laptop computer I had received for my 16th birthday, which was now held together with duct tape and barely functional. The screen was cracked and it took 15 minutes just to boot up. Marcus was living the exact college experience I had always dreamed about. He joined clubs, attended campus events, went to parties, maintained excellent grades, and built lifelong friendships. He had the luxury that every college student should have the ability to focus on learning, growing, and discovering his passions. During my sophomore year, I decided to test my parents' reaction by skipping my monthly payment for 1 month. I desperately needed to buy textbooks for my chemistry and mathematics courses, and I simply did not have the money after covering my other basic expenses. The reaction from my parents was swift and intense. My mother called me crying hysterically, saying things like, "How could you do this to your family? Do you not love us anymore? We are going to lose our home because of your selfishness." My father was equally dramatic, telling me, "I am deeply disappointed in you, Isabella. Family should always come first, no matter what. We raised you to be better than this." The guilt was absolutely overwhelming. I felt terrible for causing my parents so much emotional distress, so I immediately sent them the money plus an extra $50 as an apology. I promised them it would never happen again, and I kept that promise for the next 2 years. But during the spring semester of my junior year, something happened that changed my entire perspective on this situation. I was home for Thanksgiving break when I accidentally discovered something that made my stomach turn with anger and betrayal. I was walking through the kitchen when I noticed my parents' bank statement sitting open on the counter. I was not intentionally trying to snoop, but the numbers were right there in front of me, and what I saw was shocking. My parents had $25,000 sitting in their savings account and another $8,000 in their checking account. They were not struggling financially at all. In fact, they seemed to be doing quite well for themselves. But the discovery that really made me furious was learning that my father, Robert, had been working a part-time job at a hardware store for the past 6 months, but he had never bothered to tell me about it. My mother, Linda, had also increased her hours at the medical office to full-time over a year ago. When I did some quick calculations, I realized that the $800 I was sending them every single month was not going toward basic survival expenses like rent and utilities. That money was going directly into their retirement savings account. I was living on ramen noodles, working myself to exhaustion, and accumulating massive student loan debt while my parents were using my earnings to fund their comfortable retirement. They were essentially stealing from my future to improve their own financial situation. When I confronted my parents about this discovery, they were not apologetic or embarrassed at all. My mother said, "That money is for the future security of this entire family. You will benefit from our financial stability eventually, too." My father added, "We are teaching you valuable lessons about responsibility and work ethic. Nobody in the real world gets money handed to them for free. You should be grateful for these life lessons." When I pointed out the obvious inequality between how they treated Marcus and how they treated me, my mother dismissed my concerns immediately. She said, "Do not compare yourself to your brother. Every person in this family has different circumstances and different roles to play." That conversation was the moment I finally understood what was really happening. I was not being taught responsibility or work ethic. I was being financially exploited by the two people who were supposed to be protecting me and helping me build my own future. The anger that had been building inside me for years finally had a clear target. As my college graduation ceremony approached in the spring, I felt a mixture of excitement and nervous anticipation about starting my adult life. Despite working constantly throughout my 4 years of school, I had managed to maintain a grade point average of 3.2. It was not as high as I knew I was capable of achieving, but considering my circumstances, I felt proud of what I had accomplished. I had accepted a job offer with a marketing company in Phoenix, Arizona, with a starting annual salary of $45,000. For the first time in 6 years, I began to imagine what my life might look like with real financial freedom. I started dreaming about renting my own apartment, buying groceries without counting every penny, maybe even taking a vacation or buying some new clothes. Those dreams were completely shattered on a Sunday afternoon when my mother called me with what she described as exciting news about my post-graduation plans. I was expecting maybe a conversation about family plans for my graduation ceremony, or perhaps some words of encouragement about starting my career. Congratulations on your upcoming graduation, sweetheart. Your father and I are so incredibly proud of everything you have accomplished. She began in an unusually cheerful and enthusiastic tone that immediately made me suspicious. We need to have a serious conversation about your financial plans now that you will be earning a steady full-time income. She continued. I assumed this conversation would be about reducing or eliminating my monthly payments, since I would be starting my adult life with student loan payments and establishing my own household. I could not have been more wrong about what my mother was going to say next. Now that you will be earning $45,000 per year, your father and I have done some calculations, and we have determined that you can afford to increase your monthly contribution to the family, my mother announced, as if this was perfectly reasonable. Instead of the $800 you have been sending us, you will need to send us $1,200 each month starting with your first paycheck from your new job. I felt my heart sink, but my mother was not finished with her list of demands. Additionally, this house really needs some major renovations that we have been putting off for years. The main bathroom needs to be completely gutted and redone, and the kitchen needs significant updating with new appliances and countertops. We have already spoken with a contractor, and he has given us an estimate of approximately $30,000 for everything we want to accomplish. My mother paused for a moment, and I could hear my father talking in the background before she continued. You will need to pay $20,000 toward this renovation project, and your father and I will cover the remaining $10,000. We think this is a fair division since you will benefit from the increased value of the home. But the financial demands were not over yet. We have also decided that it is time to replace your father's old truck with a newer, more reliable SUV. We have found one that we like, and the monthly payment will be approximately $500. Since you will have the highest income in the family, it makes sense for you to take care of that payment. Finally, my mother continued, we want to establish an emergency fund for the family in case we run into any unexpected expenses or difficulties. We think $200 per month would be appropriate for you to contribute to that fund. Let me break down what my parents were demanding from me. They wanted $1,200 per month for what they called my regular contribution. They wanted $500 per month for a car payment on a vehicle that I would never drive. They wanted $200 per month for an emergency fund that I would have no control over. And they wanted a one-time payment of $20,000 for home renovations. That totaled $1,900 every single month, plus $20,000 up front from someone who was going to be earning $45,000 per year. After federal and state taxes, my take-home pay would be approximately $3,000 per month. If I sent $1,900 to my parents, I would have exactly $1,100 left to live on in Phoenix, where even a basic studio apartment costs at least $800 per month. When I pointed out this obviously impossible mathematics to my mother, she had a solution ready for me. You can find a roommate to split expenses, or you can eat most of your meals at work, or you could move back home and live with the family. If you choose to move back home, we could reduce your monthly contribution to $1,500 instead of $1,900. My father took the phone to add his perspective on this generous offer. Isabella, this is an investment in the future of our entire family. When this house increases in value over the years, you will have a share in that equity. This is not just giving money away. This is building wealth for all of us. Then came the part of the conversation that revealed their true intentions. If you are not willing to agree to this arrangement, then your mother and I will have to seriously reconsider our relationship with you, my father said in a cold, threatening tone. You are 22 years old now, and if you do not want to support your family, then you can be completely independent. But do not expect any help or support from us ever again. Think very carefully about this decision, Isabella, my mother added when she took the phone back. Family is everything in this world. Nobody out there will ever care about you the way your family does. You need us more than you realize." To add even more emotional manipulation to the conversation, my mother started crying. "We have sacrificed so much over the years to give you and Marcus good lives. Now we are just asking for a little help in return. Marcus still has 2 more years before he graduates, and then he will help too. But right now, you are the only one in a position to help this family." The manipulation was obvious to me, but it was still emotionally effective. They were using my love for them and my fear of losing my family to control my financial future completely. "You have exactly 1 week to make your decision," my father said. "Your graduation ceremony is next Saturday, and we need to know your answer before then. We have already made appointments with the contractor to start planning the renovation work, and we need to know if we can move forward." As I hung up the phone and sat alone in my dorm room, I felt a combination of emotions that I had never experienced before in my life. The shock and disbelief were overwhelming, but underneath those feelings was something else, a growing sense of clarity about what my parents really thought of me. I was not their daughter in this financial arrangement. I was their personal income source. And instead of celebrating my graduation and encouraging my independence, they were planning to increase their control over my life and my earnings. For the first time in 6 years, I could see the pattern of manipulation and financial abuse that had been controlling my life. And for the first time, I started to consider the possibility of saying no. I spent the next 3 days doing intensive research about financial manipulation and toxic family relationships. I read articles, watched videos, and even made an appointment with a counselor at the University Student Services office to talk through my situation with a professional. The counselor confirmed what I was beginning to understand. This was a clear pattern of emotional and financial abuse. She helped me calculate that over the course of 6 years, I had already paid my parents approximately $57,600. That was enough money to have paid off a significant portion of my student loans, or to have built a substantial savings account for my future. I decided to make one final attempt at family communication by calling my brother Marcus. I hoped that maybe he could provide some perspective, or possibly even support my position with our parents. Instead, his response was disappointing, but not surprising. "Just do whatever they want, Isabella. It is way easier than fighting with them. You know how they get when they do not get their way. Just pay them the money and keep the peace." His reaction confirmed that everyone in my family, including Marcus, understood exactly what was happening. They just expected me to continue accepting this treatment indefinitely. On Thursday evening, exactly 1 week after my mother's phone call, I called my parents back with my final decision. "I have thought very carefully about everything we discussed last week, and I have made my decision," I began. "I will not be sending any money home after graduation. I will not be paying for renovations, car payments, or emergency funds." The silence on the other end of the phone lasted for what felt like several minutes. "I have calculated that I have contributed approximately $57,600 to this family over the past 6 years. That is more than enough contribution from someone who was still a teenager when this arrangement started." My mother immediately began crying and saying, "You are abandoning your family, Isabella. How can you be so selfish and ungrateful after everything we have done for you over the years?" My father was much angrier in his response. "Fine, have it your way. Do not come crying to us when you fail out there on your own. You are completely on your own now. Do not expect any help from this family ever again." I had prepared myself for this exact reaction, so I remained calm and continued with what I needed to say. "I am taking the job in Phoenix, and I will be financially independent. I hope that we can maintain a relationship that is not based on money, but that choice is up to you." The conversation ended with my parents hanging up on me. That Saturday, I walked across the stage at my college graduation ceremony. My parents did not attend. 2 weeks later, I moved to Phoenix and started my new job. For the first time in 6 years, I experienced what real financial freedom felt like. I could buy groceries without calculating every single penny. I could afford to live in a decent apartment in a safe neighborhood. I started building an emergency fund and began making extra payments on my student loans to pay them off faster. More importantly, I began developing a normal social life for the first time since I was 15 years old. I joined a hiking club through my workplace, started building friendships with my colleagues, and slowly began to understand what healthy relationships actually looked like. 8 months after graduation, my parents called me. "We miss you, Isabella. Maybe we can work something out and repair our relationship." I agreed to meet them for coffee, but I was completely firm about my boundaries. "I am happy to have a relationship with you both, but financial support is no longer part of that relationship." Slowly, over the course of several months, our relationship began to improve. Without the constant stress and resentment surrounding money, we were able to reconnect as family members, rather than as creditor and debtor. Through this experience, I learned that love and financial obligation are two completely different things. Real family support means wanting each other to thrive and succeed, not keeping each other trapped in cycles of dependency and financial control. Setting boundaries with my parents did not make me selfish or ungrateful. It made me strong enough to build healthy relationships based on mutual respect rather than financial manipulation and emotional blackmail. The money I paid over those 6 years did teach me about responsibility and work ethic, but standing up for myself taught me something far more valuable: self-respect and the importance of protecting my own future. Today, I am 24 years old, completely debt-free, except for my student loans, which I am aggressively paying off, and I am building the life I actually want for myself. Sometimes the greatest gift you can give your family is showing them that independence and genuine love can coexist peacefully. What would you have done if you were in my situation? Have you ever experienced financial manipulation from family members who claimed they were helping you? I would love to hear your thoughts and experiences in the comments below. If this story resonated with you in any way, please hit that like button and subscribe for more real-life stories about overcoming challenging family dynamics. Please share this video with anyone who might need to hear this message about setting healthy financial boundaries with family. Thank you so much for listening to my story, and I sincerely hope it helps you recognize that you deserve relationships built on love and mutual respect, not financial obligation or emotional manipulation. Remember that your future and your financial security matter just as much as anyone else in your family.